What if the road home didn't lead back? On a forgotten stretch of highway, exit 99 appears out of nowhere, leading tired drivers into a town frozen in the 1950s. No map marks it, no GPS warns you, and once you're there, the people greet you like you've always belonged. But here's the catch. The clocks reset every night at midnight. For traveling Nurse Marie, it's more than a detour. It's limbo. And if she doesn't uncover the truth soon, she might forget who she was. Forever. Welcome to Exit 99. Don't fall asleep at the wheel. Some exits take you somewhere strange. Some take you nowhere at all. And then there's Exit 99, Marie Collins. Had one rule on the road: never trust your GPS at night. But when her phone rerouted her to a mysterious exit she'd never seen before, fatigue got the better of her. One wrong turn off Highway 17, and she found herself in a place time forgot. The streets were too clean. The air was too still. The town was picture perfect, like a postcard from the 1950s. Everyone was friendly, too friendly. They called her by name, said she'd been there for years, but Marie didn't remember any of it. Each night the town resets itself like clockwork. Every building, every smile, every false memory. And as Marie begins to search for a way out, she discovers a secret buried beneath the quaint smiles and diner jukeboxes. Her body is in a hospital bed miles away, caught in a coma after a crash she doesn't remember. This isn't a town, it's a prison between life and death, a ghost loop for lost souls. And the longer she stays, the more she forgets. Exit 99 isn't just cursed, it's hungry. Hungry for time, memory, and people who don't realize they're already dead. Story number 1. It was an ordinary night, the kind that stretches on forever with nothing more than the hum of the truck's engine and the occasional flicker of headlights in the distance. But for Liam Grady, a long-haul trucker who'd been driving the same route for years, nothing felt ordinary anymore. Every night at exactly 2:13 a.m., something happened. Something he couldn't explain. He had been hearing about it for months now. The rumors about a blinding white light on Highway 66, right around mile marker 13. Drivers talked about it in hushed tones at truck stops and greasy spoons. They'd wake up hours later, miles down the road with no memory of how they'd gotten there. Some of them swore they lost hours, others lost whole days. It all sounded crazy until it happened to Liam. The first time he'd seen it, he thought his eyes were playing tricks. A flash of white light, like the sun had come out at midnight. His rig swerved. He slammed on the brakes, but it was too late. The light blinded him, and when he came to, he was a dozen miles past mile marker 13. The clock on his dash read 3:47 a.m. That was 2 weeks ago. Now, every night he kept his eyes on the road, waiting for that cursed moment. He was determined to figure out what was going on, even if it meant driving into the heart of madness. And tonight, he had a plan. Liam had spent days researching, talking to the truckers who'd been around longer than him, listening to the whispers. One name kept coming up: the Hollow Motel, an old, rundown place, long abandoned just off the highway. It was said to be right at mile marker 13. He had to check it out. As the clock ticked down, he could feel the tension rising. It was nearing 2:13 a.m., and sure enough, his headlights suddenly flared bright against something white, brighter than any light should be. His pulse quickened, the familiar, blinding flash. But this time, he fought it. He clenched his hands on the wheel, determined to stay awake. He wanted answers. not more lost time. The next thing he knew, he was no longer on the highway. Liam found himself on a dusty road that seemed too narrow, too quiet. The truck rolled to a slow stop in front of an old motel, its neon sign flickering like a dying heart. The Hollow Motel. He had arrived. The place looked like it hadn't seen life in decades. The windows were boarded up. The paint was peeling off the walls. The air smelled of mildew and decay. But there was something about it that drew him in. Something unnatural. He stepped out of his truck, his boots crunching against the gravel. The silence of the night was suffocating. And then, from behind the motel's front desk came a sound. Soft footsteps. A man appeared. The motel manager. Tall, with pale skin, his eyes too bright, too alert. He was dressed in a suit, though it was clear it had been out of style for years. "Can I help you, traveler?" The motel manager's voice was smooth, almost too smooth. Liam didn't answer immediately. He couldn't shake the feeling that this man was wrong. He looked around the deserted lobby, the flickering lights. I need to know what's going on," Liam stammered, his voice tight. "What happens at 2:13 a.m.? What is this place?" The manager's smile didn't reach his eyes. "Ah, I see. Another curious soul. You'll find that answers here come at a price, my friend. Time, you see, doesn't work the same in this place. It never has." Before Liam could respond, the doors to the motel opened and another figure stepped inside. A woman. Her eyes were hollow, tired, as though she hadn't slept in decades. "My name's Sarah," she said, her voice tinged with desperation. "I've been here far too long." Liam looked at her, confused. "How long?" She shook her head. "I've tried to escape, tried every night to break the cycle, but I can't." Her eyes locked onto his. "I think you're stuck too, now. Welcome to the loop." Liam's heart dropped into his stomach. He stepped back, his mind racing. He didn't want to believe it, but the pieces were starting to fall into place. The missing time, the strange sense of déjà vu, the light. The motel was the key. "What do you mean, stuck?" Liam demanded, his voice rising. "The cult," Sarah murmured. "The one that built this place. They were here in the 70s, a group of crazed fanatics. They didn't just worship something, they tried to control time itself, and they succeeded. For some of us, that means we're stuck in a never-ending loop, reliving the same hours over and over. Some of us were guests here, others, like you just arrived. But once you're in, you can't leave." Liam's head spun. His brother, he'd disappeared just like this, vanishing without a trace. The memories hit him all at once, too fast, too sharp. His brother had been traveling, heading down Highway 66. Had he too ended up at mile marker 13? "Officer Ron," Sarah said quietly, her voice thick with memory. "He's one of them. One of the ones who's been here since the 70s. He's one of us now." Suddenly, Liam felt a hand on his shoulder. He spun around. The motel manager was behind him, his face closer than before, eyes gleaming. "It's too late," the man whispered. "You were always meant to be here. Your brother, he never left." Liam's knees buckled and he stumbled backward into the darkness of the motel lobby. The door slammed shut behind him. There was no escape, no way out. The next morning, or what he would later realize was the next day in the loop, Liam Grady stood behind the front desk of the Hollow Motel. The same motel manager watched him, smiling as though nothing had changed. Another traveler, would arrive soon. Another lost soul looking for answers. And Liam? He'd become a permanent resident. Forever. At 2:13 a.m., the light would flash and time would start all over again. Story number 2. The wind carried the whispers, just as the locals said it would. That's what everyone who had lived in Hollow Creek for longer than a few months would tell you, at least if you asked them about Black Hollow Road. They'd speak, about it like an old superstition, something best left alone, something that wouldn't hurt you as long as you stayed away. But Dana Wells, a young college folklorist, didn't buy into those kinds of stories. She was the logical sort, the type who relied on facts, research, and evidence. She'd heard the rumors too, of course. Whispers in the wind, figures moving between the trees, the eerie pull of the road at night. People claimed to hear voices of loved ones who had long since disappeared, pleading to be found. That was exactly why Dana had come to Hollow Creek in the first place. The stories fascinated her. These stories about loss, grief, and the way legends grow in small towns. Her sister's death had left a hole in her heart, a wound she was still trying to make sense of. So, when she heard about Black Hollow Road, a place where the dead seemed to linger and the living got lost, she saw it as an opportunity to study the supernatural up close. But nothing had prepared her for what she'd find. It started innocently enough. Dana arrived in town a week ago, met the locals, and settled into the rented cabin. It wasn't long before she began asking questions. The answers were vague and filled with hesitation. Nobody seemed to want to talk about the road, and those who did spoke of it as if it were cursed. "Don't go there," warned Jacob, a scruffy local boy in his 20s who had once lived on the edge of Black Hollow Road, his voice lowering to a whisper. "I've seen it. I've heard it. But I can't remember much of the night. Dana's curiosity only deepened. She pressed him further, but Jacob didn't seem to have much else to offer. His eyes were haunted, like a man who'd been to the edge of something and barely come back. Still, she was undeterred. Dana had come to unravel the mystery, and unravel it she would. Professor Marks, Dana's mentor back at university, had told her to be cautious. "Black Hollow Road is older than the town itself, Dana. Some things aren't meant to be explained," he'd warned in his last email. But Dana didn't believe in backing down from a challenge. She thought of her sister, how her sudden death had left a hole she couldn't fill, and of how the old folks' stories might finally offer the answers she needed. That night, she drove out to Black Hollow Road. It was just a small stretch of asphalt that seemed ordinary enough, the kind of road you'd pass without much thought. But as she drove further into the woods, the air around her began to feel wrong. The forest pressed in on her, its trees dark and close like they were watching. Then, at exactly 2:13 a.m., it happened. The whispers began. At first, they were soft, faint like the sound of wind rustling through dry leaves. But as Dana slowed her truck, the whispers grew louder, clearer until they seemed to surround her. It was as if they were coming from all around, yet there was no one in sight. Dana. Her breath caught in her throat. The voice was unmistakable. It was her sister. "Dana, help me. I'm lost. I need you." She slammed on the brakes, her heart racing. The truck idled in the middle of the road. The whispers were like an invisible rope pulling her into the trees. She could almost see her sister's face in the shadows between the trunks, pale and desperate. She hadn't realized. She was crying until she tasted the salt on her lips. "Sarah?" she whispered, her voice cracking. A chill washed over her. Something wasn't right. Her sister had died 3 years ago. This wasn't her, but the voice, it was so familiar, so real. She reached for the door handle, but as soon as her hand touched it, the truck shifted. The road, it wasn't the same anymore. The trees that had lined the path were gone, replaced by a dense fog. The sky overhead had shifted too, now a sickly shade of yellow. The air smelled of damp earth and decay, and then out of the fog came more voices. Her sister's voice, soft and pleading, was joined by others. A woman, a man, children, all crying for help, all lost in the same way. Dana stepped out of the truck, her heart pounding, her mind reeling. The forest seemed to reach out to her, its limbs bending unnaturally toward her as though it were alive. Dana. It was her sister again. She could feel it now. Feel the pull. The forest wanted her. The road wanted her. Dana turned, ready to run back to the truck, but when she looked up, she saw something that froze her in place. The road was gone. The truck was gone. In fact, there was no road. There was only a vast, endless forest that stretched in every direction. The road had shifted. It was a part of the forest now, and the forest was part of the road. She couldn't move. Behind her, she heard the heavy rustle of something breaking through the trees. The figure that emerged was tall, black, and shapeless. It had no face, only the dark silhouette of a twisted form, a creature that fed on sorrow. It was the road spirit, the entity that had trapped so many before her. "You shouldn't have come," a voice rasped in her mind. It was cold, cruel, and ancient. "But now, you are mine." Dana tried to run, but her feet were frozen to the earth. The whispers swirled around her, louder now, all of them pleading, begging her to turn back, to resist. But it was too late. The road spirit reached out with tendrils of darkness, wrapping around her like chains. Dana screamed, but her voice was swallowed by the wind. And then there was silence. The next night, the road was the same. Dana Wells was gone, swallowed whole by the forest, but her voice joined the others, whispering in the wind. She was just another echo, lost among the many who had walked the road before her. And somewhere in the shadows of the trees, the road spirit smiled. Another victim, another lost soul. And the whispers grew louder. Story number 3. It was a quiet town. Too quiet. The kind of place where everyone knew everyone, but no one really cared to know anyone at all. The houses were old, their paint chipped and peeling, the lawns a dull brown that resisted every attempt at life. The streets were lined with rusting cars, and the people who lived here shuffled along, just going through the motions of life. The kind of town that was always just one bad memory away from being forgotten. But there was one street in this decaying town that no one talked about, except in whispers. Dead End Drive. Claire Maddox had only moved to the town a few months ago, looking for a fresh start after the death of her husband and the crumbling of her marriage. She needed a change for herself and for her son, Marcus, who had become increasingly distant and angry. They were both still grieving, though in different ways. But when Claire found the old, run-down house at the edge of the town, she thought, maybe it was time to rebuild. What she didn't know was that Dead End Drive was a place where the past and future twisted together, a place where reality wasn't quite right. It started with the dare. Marcus had been hanging out with a group, of local teens, kids who were rough around the edges and had a hunger for thrills. Marcus, always the rebellious one, had fallen in with them easily. And when they dared him to drive down Dead End Drive in the middle of the night, he didn't hesitate. "I'll be back in 10 minutes, he told her, a cocky smile on his face. It was a smile she hadn't seen in months, one that she'd forgotten he had. But 10 minutes passed, then 20, then an hour. Claire tried calling his phone, but it went straight to voicemail. Panic crept up her spine. Her heart raced in her chest. When the sun finally rose, Marcus still hadn't come home. She couldn't breathe. Claire knew something wasn't right. Something about this town, about Dead End Drive, was pulling at her, calling her toward it like a magnet. She didn't want to admit it to herself, but the feeling of dread was overwhelming. This wasn't just another runaway teen story. This was something else. The police didn't take her seriously. "Kids go missing all the time, ma'am," the officer had said, eyes glazed with the weariness of years of answering the same calls. "He'll turn up." But Claire didn't believe that. She had to find him. And so, with the sun sinking low in the sky, she set out to find the one place that everyone avoided, Dead End Drive. The street was worse than she imagined. The road was cracked and uneven, the streetlights dim, like the town had forgotten how to keep things lit. It was eerily quiet, save for the wind that howled through the trees, making the leaves rustle like whispers. Claire's car rolled slowly down the road, the headlights barely cutting through the growing darkness. As she passed the last house on the street, she saw something out of the corner of her eye. A flicker of movement. She slammed on the brakes, her heart in her throat. Standing in front of her car was a figure, a woman. Her clothes were tattered, her hair wild and tangled, her face pale, gaunt, but it was her eyes that stopped Claire dead in her tracks. "Help me," the woman whispered, her voice hoarse, dry. "Get out while you still can." Claire didn't have time to process what she saw. The figure disappeared before she could respond, melting into the shadows as if she was never there. Shaking, Claire pushed forward. Her hands gripped the wheel so tight her knuckles turned white. She felt the air in the car grow cold, and when she glanced in the rearview mirror, she thought she saw something. Or someone. The face of a boy. Marcus. Suddenly, the car jerked to a halt. Claire looked up to find the road ahead blocked by nothing. It was a dead end. Literally, the road simply stopped. That was when Claire understood. Dead End Drive wasn't just a street. It was a place between worlds. A man appeared in front of her car, tall, dressed in a dark suit, his face hidden in shadow. His presence was suffocating, like he belonged to this place, like he was a part of the air itself. "Do you know where you are?" he asked, his voice deep and strange, as if it came from far, far away. I'm looking for my son," Claire stammered. "Where is he? What is this place?" The man's lips curled into a faint smile, but there was no warmth in it. "Your son is here. He's one of many, trapped between life and death, just as all who come here are. Dead End Drive is not just a road. It's a liminal space. Time bends here. Reality bends here. You can't leave until you understand what you're truly searching for." The man vanished just as quickly as he had appeared, leaving Claire alone, with the terrible realization. Marcus had been lost on this road, and now so was she. She stepped out of the car, her legs shaky beneath her. As she walked toward the edge of the road, the air grew thicker, the shadows deeper. The wind seemed to whisper her name. Claire. Her son's voice. She knew it immediately. She followed the voice. What she found was not her son, but a place, frozen in time. Children and teenagers, some of them young, others appearing to be stuck for decades. They roamed the streets aimlessly, their faces empty, their eyes lost. "Marcus!" Claire called out, her voice breaking. "Marcus!" A figure appeared from the darkness. It was Marcus, but not the Marcus she remembered. His eyes were hollow, his expression distant. "I couldn't leave," he whispered, his voice a hollow echo. It was the only way to escape. To escape what you never understood. My pain, my hurt, the road offered me peace. Claire's heart broke. She had never understood what her son had been going through, but this was far beyond her comprehension. "You can leave," Tanya said suddenly, a teenager who had been stuck here for 30 years. Her eyes were tired, resigned. "You have to make a choice. One life to free them all, or one life to stay here forever." Claire knew what she had to do. She couldn't let her son stay in this place, trapped forever. She had to set him and the others free. But to do that, she had to give up the one thing she loved most in the world: her son. She stood in the center of the road, her eyes locking, with Marcus's for the last time. The road seemed to pulse with energy, the shadows swirling around her like a storm. "I'm sorry," she whispered, and then she stepped forward into the darkness. As Claire's form disappeared, the road began to shift. The teens, the lost souls of Dead End Drive, all began to fade into the night, freed from their endless wandering. But Marcus, his eyes locked on her, remained. Watching her vanish into the liminal space, the last whisper of his mother's voice, forever etched in the silence, and Dead End Drive waited for its next victim. Story number 4. There's a stretch of highway, the kind that goes on for miles with nothing around but dead trees and fields that never seem to grow. You can drive for hours without seeing another car, just the occasional sign, maybe a rusted out gas station or an old diner where the lights are always flickering. That's how Noah Reyes found it. The toll booth. It wasn't supposed to be there. Noah, a paramedic, was used to long hours on the road, the kind of empty stretches that swallowed him whole in the dark. He'd seen it all. Crashes, heart attacks, suicides. He'd saved lives and lost lives, and somehow always felt like the weight of them settled in his chest. But when he drove down that road, somewhere between the dead of night and the first hint of dawn, there was something that felt different. The toll booth was out of place. It stood alone on the side of the road, lights buzzing like a sickness. It wasn't on any map, wasn't listed as a part of the highway, just sitting there in the middle of nowhere like an unwanted memory. The booth itself was small, made of old wood, the windows cracked, the paint peeling, but there was a man behind the glass. He had been waiting. The man didn't look like anyone Noah had seen before. Too still, too calm, his skin pale, almost translucent, like a ghost that wasn't ready to leave yet. And the toll, it was too much. $1, a penny, the kind of strange demand that didn't make sense. Noah, tired and trying to make it back home, pulled up to the booth anyway. The man didn't move, didn't even blink. "Pay the toll," the man said in a voice that sounded too old to belong to a human being. The exact toll. Noah didn't think much of it at the time. He tossed a handful of change into the metal tray, but it was wrong. The man behind the glass didn't accept it, just stared at the coins like they didn't mean anything. When Noah tried to drive off, the man's eyes locked onto his. There was a moment, a terrible, endless moment, before the toll booth shook like the ground was coming alive beneath it. The world seemed to tilt sideways. Then the accident happened. The crash. A screech of metal and the smell of burning rubber. Noah remembered it like a terrible dream. The sound of glass shattering, his car flipping. Everything had gone black. When he woke up, he was in the hospital. His head throbbed, his body screamed in pain, and his wife, Amber, was gone. The doctors told him it was a miracle he survived, but Noah couldn't shake the feeling that something else had happened. He couldn't remember the toll booth fully, but there was a nagging thought that stayed with him, a feeling that something, or someone, was waiting for him. It started with visions. Amber would show up when he closed his eyes, standing there with a sad smile, her voice just a whisper in the wind. She wasn't angry, not at first, but she was distant, like she was trying to tell him something. But the more he thought about it, the more he realized that everything about the accident, everything about the toll booth, felt wrong. He began to drive the roads at night, looking, searching, obsessed. It didn't take long for him to find the toll booth again. This time, he didn't hesitate. The operator, the man, was still there, waiting. His eyes didn't blink. He didn't speak until Noah was right in front of him. "You didn't pay the toll," the man said, his voice like gravel being ground underfoot. Noah shook his head. "What the hell is this place? Why didn't I die? Why did Amber—" The man didn't answer. Instead, he gestured toward the toll. A strange, thick black book that sat on the counter. The man smiled. "Every toll paid," the man said slowly, "becomes a life debt." Noah didn't understand. "What do you mean, a life debt? You're just collecting money, right?" The man shook his head. "No, the tolls are not for money. They are for sins, for debts you do not even know you owe. Every time someone passes through here without paying their dues, they enter into the world of judgment." Noah recoiled. He looked around at the toll booth, the cracked wood, the old lights buzzing above. "I didn't know," he said, his throat tight. "I didn't know I was supposed to pay anything. I don't understand." The man's expression didn't change. "You owe something," he said softly. "Everyone does." Noah's world twisted further. He began to piece it together, pieces of the puzzle that had been there all along but hidden from him. The toll booth wasn't just collecting money, it was collecting sins, collecting debts. The accidents, the deaths. The tolls weren't just payments, they were judgment. And the people who didn't pay the price? They became part of the toll booth's eternal collection. Noah went to see Father Travis, a local priest who had been investigating the toll booth for years. The priest, pale and exhausted, told him the truth in fragments, how the toll booth had existed for centuries, how the man behind the booth was no mere mortal, but a fallen angel named Ezra, cast out of heaven and bound to the booth forever. Ezra had been given the task of judging those who passed, but instead of judgment, he had started collecting the sins of everyone who passed through, and those sins built up into life debts. "You have to destroy it," Father Travis urged. "You have to destroy the booth or else more will be trapped." But Noah knew he couldn't destroy it. He knew now what he had to do. He had to take Amber's place, had to take on the debt she could never pay, the debt of every life lost, every sin left unpaid. Noah returned to the toll booth for the last time. Ezra stood there watching, as if waiting for Noah to understand what was coming. "The booth needs an operator," Ezra said. "A keeper, someone who will take the tolls and keep them forever." Noah knew then that he had no choice. He stepped forward, and as soon as his foot crossed the threshold, the world shifted again. He could hear Amber's voice, distant and lost. He could feel her love, but it wasn't enough. He wasn't going to leave. Not now, not anymore. Ezra's form grew brighter, his wings folding around Noah. "You are the new keeper," he said softly, "between life and judgment. Forever." The booth's lights flickered, and the world beyond the booth fell away. Noah was no longer a paramedic. He was the keeper, the one who would watch over the tolls, the one who would collect sins and debts until the end of time. And in the darkness, the voices of those who had passed echoed, forever and ever, waiting to be judged, waiting to pay. Noah Reyes was no longer a man. He was a part of the toll booth, forever. Story number 5. Jenna Clay lived for the buzz. Every click, every comment, every like, it was a rush. As a YouTuber and influencer, she had carved out a life for herself where the only thing that mattered was what people saw. Her followers, the chat, were her lifeblood. Ty, her boyfriend and cameraman, was always by her side, helping her chase after the next big thing. But they needed something big, something that would get them trending, that would put them on the map. That's when they found it. Route 666. The highway had been closed off years ago after a string of gruesome disappearances. There were whispers, rumors. People talked about how the road was cursed, how anyone who ventured down it never came back. The authorities had decommissioned it after too many lives were lost, and after the last body was found, no one dared go near it. The signs were torn down, the road was barricaded, and it slowly faded from the maps. But recently, something strange had happened. The road started showing up again, reappearing on GPS systems. It was like it had never disappeared at all. Perfect, Jenna thought, her mind already racing with possibilities. A road that was thought to be lost, now mysteriously back, just waiting for people to explore it. She saw it. The viral video, the live stream, the clicks, the views, the fame. Ty, we're doing this, she said, looking at her boyfriend with that glint in her eye. We're driving Route 666. Ty hesitated for a second. You know the stories, right? People say, weird things happen there. I mean, people disappear. No one really knows what happened to them. Jenna just laughed. Ty, that's the kind of stuff that gets views. Who cares about the stories? We'll be fine. It'll be a road trip for the books. Ty wasn't convinced, but he never argued with her when she got like this. He just grabbed the camera, set up the gear, and got in the car. They weren't looking for danger, not exactly. They just wanted content. And content was everything. The live stream started at the edge of the highway. Jenna hit the record button, flashing a bright smile at the camera. Hey guys, it's your girl Jenna, and we're about to do something crazy tonight. Drive down the infamous Route 666. This place is known for some serious mystery, and we're gonna find out what it's all about. So, buckle up and let's go. Ty drove as the camera rolled and the road stretched out in front of them. Dark, winding, eerily empty. They passed the old signs, now faded and barely legible. The trees on either side of the road were tall and twisted, their branches like skeletal fingers reaching out, trying to grab at them. The air felt heavy, thick with something. something watching. Jenna's voice cut through the silence. Look, at this. It's like a scene straight out of a horror movie, right? There's nothing around, no lights, no cars, just the two of us and the road. Who wants to bet we get 1 million views from this? The comments started rolling in. This is crazy. Are you guys sure this is a good idea? I'm getting serious bad vibes. Jenna laughed it off, making fun of the worried comments. Ty stayed, focused on the road, but even he couldn't shake the feeling that something was off. He glanced at the GPS on the dashboard. It wasn't right. The map looked distorted, as if the road itself was moving, reshaping. But before he could say anything, he heard Jenna's voice again. Guys, look at this. Do you see that? She pointed her phone's camera out the window, and at first, Ty thought, it was just a trick of the light. But no, something was there, in the trees. A figure, thin, almost translucent, like a shadow moving against the backdrop of darkness. Who the hell is that? Ty asked, gripping the steering wheel. The figure didn't answer. It didn't even look like it was moving, more like it was watching them. But the worst part? It was as though the figure was staring directly at the camera, directly at their live stream. Jenna zoomed in. Guys, this is insane. There's someone out there. What do you think? Is it a ghost, a hitchhiker, or maybe a killer? Should we go check it out? The comments flooded in even faster. I don't like this. Turn around. Don't go out there, it's not safe. But Jenna was already out of the car. Ty followed reluctantly, the camera still recording. They walked toward the trees, their footsteps muffled by the eerie quiet. And then it happened. The figure, the shadow, shifted. It moved toward them faster than humanly possible, like it was gliding rather than walking. Jenna screamed, her phone falling from her hand. Ty turned to run, but something froze him in place. The world around them felt wrong, as if the air itself was pushing back against them. The camera shook as Ty fumbled to grab it, but then, the screen flickered. The comments stopped coming in. Everything seemed to pause. The whole world seemed to pause. And then, with a screech that shook Ty to his core, the shadow figure rushed toward them. But it wasn't a figure anymore. It was a mass of eyes. Thousands of eyes, staring, hungry, filling the darkness with a deafening noise. Jenna! Ty shouted, but his voice was swallowed by the sound. And then, nothing. The screen went black. Ty stumbled back to the car, breathless, his heart racing. Jenna was gone. Vanished. There was no sign of her. No sign of the figure. Nothing. Ty scrambled into the car, his hands shaking as he started. The engine. The road, Route 666, had disappeared. The GPS was blank. It was like they had driven into another world entirely. And now, he was trapped. The live stream? It was still running, but it wasn't showing them anymore. It was showing the road, the same stretch of blacktop, the same twisted trees, and then Jenna's voice. Help me. Help us. But it wasn't a recording. It was live. It was happening now. The chat flooded with comments, but this time they weren't the usual emojis or banter. It was different. We can see you. You shouldn't have come. Now you're part of it. Ty tried to turn off the stream, but it wouldn't stop. No matter what he did, it kept running. The camera's lens pointing back at him, the chat on fire with warnings, pleas, and threats. The next day, when the cops arrived, the car was still there. The live stream was still there, playing, replaying, and now, every day, at the same time, the stream starts. Jenna's scream echoes through the screen. The chat goes wild, and Route 666 reopens. But no one has ever found the road again. And now, every time someone watches the live stream, they become a part of the curse. A part of the watcher's audience. Forever. The screen keeps playing, repeating, the shadow waiting for its next victim. Story number 6. The sun had barely begun to set over the small town of Ashford, and the highway was already alive with the hum of tires on pavement. Lena Hart stared out her windshield, the fading light catching the edges of her rearview mirror. As a fire marshal, she had seen her fair share of accidents and fires, but this felt different. The new highway had only been open for a few months, and it was already causing strange things to happen. It started with the car fires. At first, it seemed like a string of coincidences, just engine failures, faulty wiring, but the fires weren't just happening to old cars or poorly maintained vehicles. They were happening to newer models too, with no logical explanation. One by one, cars would catch fire as soon as they hit the new stretch of road, and it wasn't just fire. There were strange accidents too. People swerving off the road, disappearing without a trace like they'd been swallowed whole by the earth itself. Something about the highway didn't sit right with Lena. It was too smooth, too clean, as if the road had been laid down over something that didn't belong there. Lena had dealt with fire before. A lifetime spent battling the flames had taught her a lot, but there was something more to these fires, something unnatural. She'd seen the scorch marks, too dark, too deep, like they were caused by something more than just fuel. Her chief, Roberts, was skeptical, as always. "It's just bad luck, Hart. People are careless, that's all," he had said. But Lena wasn't buying it. There was something pulling at her, something she couldn't shake, like a low buzz under her skin. That night, Lena found herself on the road again, tracing the curve of the highway, searching for answers. She had heard whispers, stories passed down over the years, about a mass grave, about witches who had been burned here centuries ago. People in Ashford didn't talk much about it, not openly, but the stories lingered in the background, like the smell of smoke that wouldn't wash away. As she passed the first bend, something caught her eye. The pavement here was different, a faint crack running across it. She stopped her car, feeling the weight of the air around her. The temperature dropped and she felt a shiver crawl up her spine. Something was wrong. She stepped out of her car and moved toward the crack in the pavement. It wasn't just a crack, it was a seam, like something was buried underneath. And then, as if responding to her presence, a voice called out. It was faint, like a whisper in the wind, but it felt alive. Lena froze, her breath catching in her throat. Lena! She spun around, but there was no one there. The road stretched on, dark and empty. Lena, you're one of us. The voice came again, this time clearer. Lena's heart pounded in her chest, but her feet felt rooted to the ground. She looked down at her hands, feeling the heat of the pavement beneath her. Her family, her heritage, had always been quiet about their roots. She had never asked questions. But now, something clicked inside her mind. Something she had buried for years. A long-forgotten memory. A whispered secret her grandmother had once told her. The witches. Her bloodline had been tied to them, to the women who were burned at the stake in the 1600s for practicing magic. Their ashes had been scattered, but their spirits had never truly left. And the highway, it had been built over their grave. Lena." The voice was clearer now, a soft, childlike whisper. She turned to see a figure standing at the edge of the road, a little girl, no older than 6 or 7, her face pale, her eyes wide and sad. Who are you?" Lena asked, her voice trembling. The girl's lips curled into a soft, almost sorrowful smile. "I am Ellie. I've been waiting for you." Lena's heart skipped a beat. The name. Ellie. It was a name that had echoed in her family for generations. It was her great-great-grandmother's name, the one who had escaped the fire, the one who had protected Lena's line from the curse. But how could this be real? Was this a ghost? A hallucination? "You've always known," Ellie said, her voice gentle but insistent. "The road is more than just a highway. It's the path to what was buried. It's where they died, and now they want to be free." Lena felt the weight of the words settle in her chest. "The fire," she whispered. "The accidents. It's them, isn't it?" "The spirits," Ellie nodded. "Yes, the ashes are rising. The road ignites them. They seek revenge. They've waited centuries for this moment." The ground beneath Lena's feet trembled and the asphalt cracked open, revealing what lay beneath. Ashes, hundreds, maybe thousands of brittle bones, crushed into the earth over the centuries. The spirits of the witches were waking up. The road was their grave, and now it was their pyre. Lena staggered back, but Ellie was right there, her tiny hand gripping Lena's wrist. "You are one of them, Lena. You have the blood of the witches in you. You must help them." Lena's heart hammered in her chest. Her body felt cold, but the air around her was thick with heat. The flames were rising from the ground, creeping up her legs, licking the air with hungry fingers. "I don't know how to—" "You don't have to do anything," Ellie interrupted. "You just have to let it happen." The ground trembled again, this time with more force, and the flames spread. They weren't just flames, they were alive, like serpents twisting and reaching. The wind picked up, whipping around her as the voices of the witches filled the air. Whispers of anger, of pain, of betrayal. The flames were alive with their fury. Lena closed her eyes, letting the heat of the fire wrap around her, burning away the fear, burning away everything she had known. She felt the weight of the ashes, the centuries of sorrow, all pressing down on her. She was one of them, she realized. She always had been. And then the flames consumed her. The heat was unbearable, but it wasn't pain. It was freedom. The Coven's revenge was finally being realized. Lena Hart was gone, but the fire would burn forever. The road would burn, the ashes would rise, and the witches would have their revenge. The town of Ashford would never forget the price of forgetting the past. The road would always be there, and those who drove it would know its curse, its flames, its spirits, its ashes. Every night, the fire would return, and Lena, now one with the flames, would be there to remind them all. Story number 7. Highway 54 had always been a lonely stretch of road. It wound through miles of nothing, endless fields, empty towns, and long stretches of darkened woods. Drivers who took the highway knew the emptiness well, the quiet that came with driving through the endless stretches of nothingness. But every year, without fail, something strange would happen. A hitchhiker would appear. He wasn't much to look at. Pale, thin, ragged clothes, a face that seemed half-formed like something out of a bad dream. The reports always said the same thing. If you picked him up, you were never seen again. No one knew who he was or where he came from, but those who vanished left nothing but dust and a feeling of dread in the air. People started to avoid Highway 54 altogether, and the stories of the hitchhiker grew darker, more chilling with each passing year. Hank Wilson knew all about Highway 54. As a retired cop, he had spent years patrolling its desolate stretches, keeping an eye on the occasional wandering soul. But he didn't fear the hitchhiker stories, not at first. What haunted Hank more than the hitchhiker was his own daughter, Riley. 3 years ago, she'd gone missing. No signs, no clues, just vanished without a trace. Hank had searched every inch of the town and beyond for her. Every lead, every tip, every dead end. But nothing. Riley was just gone. The pain of losing her, the guilt of not having been able to protect her, ate away at him every day. One evening, as Hank sat at the bar nursing his drink, old Marv shuffled in. Marv was a drifter, a man who'd survived the highways, or so he claimed. He'd been on Highway 54 a dozen times, and each time he had a new story, a new warning. This time, he had something different to say. "You know about the hitcher, right?" Marv asked, taking a seat next to Hank. Hank didn't answer. He already knew the stories. He'd heard them 1,000 times. "You don't understand," Marv continued, leaning in close. "He's collecting souls. Every year, more disappear, but it's not random. You see, there's a deal with death itself. The hitcher. He's trying to get out." Hank frowned, but Marv's eyes were wide with fear, as though he'd seen something he couldn't explain. Yeah, sure, souls. Deal with death, all that crap," Hank said, tired. "I've heard it all before, Marv." But Marv wasn't done. "It's not just about the hitcher," Marv said, voice low and shaky. "It's about the ones who pick him up. You see, the hitcher isn't alone. He's got someone helping him, someone close to him, and every year, the number of people who disappear grows. But there's a pattern. The ones who pick him up, they always end up in a place that doesn't exist. They go down the highway and never come back." Hank didn't know why he was listening. He wanted to tune Marv out, to just drown the pain of the last few years in alcohol and silence. But something about the old man's words stuck with him. A part of Hank's brain clicked. Something about the way Marv had spoken about the hitcher, the souls, the feeling that there was something more at work, something he couldn't ignore. That night, Hank decided to drive out to Highway 54. His car felt heavy with the weight of his thoughts, the hum of the tires on the asphalt like the ticking of a clock, counting down the seconds. He knew this wasn't about the hitchhiker anymore. It was about Riley, the missing pieces of his life. He didn't know what had happened to her, but something told him that this road, this highway, held the answers. As Hank drove through the night, the road twisted and turned. The moon hung low, casting pale light over the empty landscape. And then, there he was, the hitcher, standing at the side of the road, just as the stories had said. Pale, gaunt, his eyes hollow, like the windows to some forsaken world. Hank slammed on the brakes, pulling to the side of the road. The hitcher didn't move at first, just stared at the car with those empty eyes. But then, slowly, he approached. Hank's hands tightened on the steering wheel. Every instinct screamed at him to drive away, to just ignore the man. But something else, something deeper, drove him forward. His daughter, the pain of her absence, called out to him like a ghost in the back of his mind. The hitcher opened the door and slid into the passenger seat. Hank didn't say a word. The man didn't speak either. There was only the sound of the tires on the road, the quiet hum of the night, and the weight of something ancient hanging between them. Finally, the hitcher spoke, his voice cold and empty. "I've been waiting for you, Hank." Hank's breath caught. "You know my name?" The hitcher nodded, a twisted smile pulling at his lips. "You've been searching for something, haven't you? Someone. Your daughter." Hank's heart thudded painfully in his chest. "What do you know about her?" The hitcher didn't answer at first. Instead, his gaze turned out the window, as if lost in thought. Then he spoke again, quieter this time. "She's alive, Hank, but she's not the same." Hank's hands went clammy. "What do you mean?" The hitcher's eyes turned back to him, locking with his in a gaze that felt like it was piercing straight through his soul. "She's helping me. She's one of the lost souls, trapped here with me. She's been guiding the others, bringing them here. The deal's been made, and she's part of it now." Hank felt his stomach drop. "No," he whispered, shaking his head. "She can't be. She can't be." The hitcher chuckled darkly, a hollow sound. "She is, Hank. And now, you're here to help me, too. All the souls I've collected, all the people who've disappeared, they're all part of the same thing. A cycle. The highway never ends. It's a road to nowhere. A purgatory. A place that traps the lost. And now, you're part of it." The car seemed to slow, the road stretching on forever in front of them. Endless, never-ending. Hank realized, too late, that they weren't really moving forward. They were going in circles, trapped in a loop, a place between life and death. Then Hank saw something. Someone in the distance. A figure standing by the side of the road. His heart stopped as the figure came into view. It was Riley. She looked different, older, her eyes empty and distant as though she was no longer the daughter he had loved. She was just another lost soul like the others. "Riley?" Hank's voice cracked, desperation seeping into his words. She didn't respond, just stared at him with those hollow eyes. The hitcher's voice cut through the silence. "It's your choice now, Hank. Your life for hers. You can save her. Or you can save yourself. But only one can leave this place." Hank's heart broke. His daughter was lost, and no matter what he did, he knew it was too late for her. He had failed her. But there was one thing he could do. Without thinking, Hank pulled the car to a stop. He turned to the hitcher, his face set in determination. "I'll trade my life for hers," Hank said, his voice steady. The hitcher smiled. "So be it." The moment Hank spoke those words, the world seemed to dissolve. The car, the highway, Riley, they all vanished into darkness. Hank Wilson never saw the light of day again. His soul, like so many others, was trapped in the endless purgatory of Highway 54. But somewhere in that dark, eternal road, his daughter was free. And the hitcher, now with another soul, moved on to claim his next victim. Story number 8. Route 9 had always been known for its dangerous curves, but none was more infamous than the sharp, winding bend locals called the Crimson Curve. Over the years, dozens of accidents had happened here. Some were just crashes, others were much worse. The fatalities kept stacking up, and each year the stories grew darker. People started whispering about a woman in red who walked the bend, her pale face twisted in sorrow, her eyes full of despair. Some said she was the reason for the accidents. Others claimed she was a warning. Either way, no one dared drive that curve after dark. Anna Flores had always heard the stories, growing up in the small town that surrounded Route 9. She had heard her mother's warnings and the rumors that floated through the halls of school. But Anna was different. She was brave, determined, and fiercely compassionate. At 24, she had become an EMT, eager to help people, especially in a town where emergencies were a common occurrence. It was the perfect job for her, one that allowed her to face her fears head-on. Her first week on the job, she found herself working with Jeff, a grizzled veteran EMT who had seen it all. Jeff was tough, but he had a soft spot for Anna. He knew what it was like to be new and to try to prove yourself, and he was always there with advice or a sarcastic remark when she needed it. But the night she responded to a call on Route 9, everything changed. It was a typical night shift, and the call came in as just another car crash on the curve. Nothing out of the ordinary. Anna and Jeff were on their way, their sirens cutting through the quiet night. As they approached the bend, Anna's heart began to race. The dark, twisting road was eerie, and the wind carried with it an unsettling chill. "Stay sharp, kid," Jeff said, his voice gruff but reassuring. "This road's a killer. Always has been." Anna nodded, but she couldn't shake the feeling that something wasn't right. As they neared the curve, she saw it. A figure standing by the edge of the road. A woman in a flowing red dress, her face hidden in shadow, standing still like a statue. "What the hell?" Anna muttered, her foot pressing harder on the brake. The woman didn't move. She just stood there, staring into the headlights. Anna couldn't see her face clearly, but there was something about the way she stood there, unmoving, that sent a shiver down her spine. "Pull over," Jeff barked, his voice tense. Anna slowed the ambulance and pulled to the side. The figure in red was still there, but as the lights from their vehicle bathed the area, the woman seemed to fade, just vanish, like smoke in the wind. "That's impossible," Anna said, her voice trembling slightly. "I told you," Jeff muttered, his face grim. "That's her, the lady in red. I've seen her before. She's the reason the curve is cursed." Anna felt a cold wave of disbelief wash over her. She had heard the stories, of course, but she had never believed in them. Ghosts weren't real, but what she saw tonight, it didn't make sense. "Let's get to the accident," Jeff said, clearly not wanting to dwell on it. "Focus, Anna." They continued on, but Anna couldn't shake the image of the woman in red from her mind. As they arrived at the crash site, the chaos of the wreck was almost unbearable. The car was flipped over, the driver unconscious, blood pooling in the seat. But something was wrong. The moment Anna stepped out of the ambulance, she felt it. The air was heavier, thicker, and then she heard it. A voice, faint but clear. "You don't belong here." Anna's heart skipped a beat. The voice was soft, like a whisper on the wind, but it was unmistakable. She turned, expecting to see Jeff, but he was still tending to the driver. The voice came again, louder this time. "Help me." Anna's breath caught in her throat. It wasn't the wind. It wasn't the crash. It was the voice of the woman in red. Before she could process what was happening, she felt herself drawn toward the edge of the road, where the trees cast long shadows and the air was thick with the scent of decay. The woman in red stood there again. Only this time, Anna could see her face. It was her grandmother. Anna's heart slammed against her chest. The woman's face was pale, her eyes dark with sorrow, and she was staring directly at Anna. She seemed familiar, but the recognition didn't make sense. Her grandmother had died decades ago, in a crash on this very road. "Anna," the woman whispered, her voice full of anguish. "You have to help me." The world around Anna seemed to bend. The road stretched out in front of her, twisting in unnatural ways, and she felt a tug, a pull toward something dark, something terrifying. The air around her thickened, the scent of smoke rising in the distance. Her grandmother's voice called to her, stronger now. "Anna, you are the one. You have the blood." Anna staggered back, her hands shaking. Her grandmother's spirit was caught here, on this cursed curve. She wasn't the only one. She wasn't the first. The accidents, the deaths, the disappearances, they were all connected. The woman in red was not just a ghost. She was a soul, trapped, bound to this road, luring others into a parallel world where the spirits lived. Each death empowered the spirit realm, feeding the curse of the Crimson Curve. "No," Anna whispered, backing away, her mind reeling. "This isn't real." But her grandmother's face softened, a sad smile appearing on her lips. "You have to understand. I was just like them, trapped. You must help me, Anna. You must help them." Anna's breath hitched in her throat. The pull grew stronger. The road around her seemed to vanish, the sky darkening into an otherworldly shade of crimson. She was no longer standing on Route 9. She was standing at the edge of something darker, deeper, where the spirits of the past had been forgotten. And her grandmother wasn't alone. There were others, thousands of them. Each victim of the curve was part of this twisted parallel world. They had been drawn in by the woman in red, just as Anna had been. "Please," Anna whispered. "I don't know how." "You do," her grandmother said softly, her eyes filled with pain. "You are my blood. You are the key. You can stop it." Anna's heart pounded in her chest. Her mind raced with the truth she had just uncovered. Her family, her bloodline, was tied to the curse. It had always been there, buried deep within the legacy of the women who had died on this road. She didn't want to do this. She didn't want to be part of this dark world, but her grandmother's eyes, so full of sorrow and pleading, left her no choice. Anna stepped forward into the world of spirits. As she did, the woman in red reached out, her hand cold but gentle, and pulled Anna into the darkness. The road, the spirits, the curse, it would never end. But Anna would protect others, just as her grandmother had once tried to protect her. She would be the one to guard the bend, the one to ensure no more souls were lost to the Crimson Curve. And when the night fell, the lady in red would walk again, luring the next soul, while Anna remained in the spirit realm, bound to the road forever. The end of Route 9 was only the beginning. Story number 9. The project had seemed simple enough. They were reopening an old road, buried beneath the earth for decades. A few days of clearing out the trees and brush, then some quick excavation. At least that's what Owen Chase, the ambitious young engineer, had told himself. He had worked on smaller projects, but this was different. This was his chance to prove himself, to show that he had the skills and vision to lead. The road ran through a stretch of rural Appalachia, the kind of place where the land seemed to hold secrets, its thick woods and mountains hiding more than anyone would dare admit. The old road had been forgotten by most people, buried beneath new construction for years until the town decided to resurrect it for a new project. Owen was brought in to oversee the work, just another piece of the puzzle. But when the construction workers first started digging, something felt off. The gravel was different. It had a strange, almost unnatural texture. Too smooth, too dark. At first, it wasn't anything anyone noticed, but soon the workers began to feel it. The first one was Reggie, a veteran worker who'd been on the job longer than anyone else. Reggie was the kind of man who'd seen it all, from cave-ins to accidents, but even he couldn't explain what was happening. The skin on his hands began to crack, deep fissures running along his fingers. It started small, just a few lines here and there, but by the end of the day the cracks had deepened, spreading across his arms, his face, like something was trying to break free from underneath. It didn't stop there. By the next day, Reggie wasn't the only one affected. The other workers complained of pain, of a tightness in their skin that felt like it was stretching, pulling, hardening. It was as though their flesh was turning to stone. Their skin had become brittle, like cracked clay. The more they worked with the gravel, the worse it got. It spread across their bodies, leaving their skin as dry and hard as ancient rock. It wasn't just their hands either. It was their arms, their faces, their legs. At first, Owen thought it was just a freak reaction to some chemical in the soil. But then he saw it, really saw it. The road wasn't just a piece of land. It was alive. The gravel they were using to pave the road was the cause, and it wasn't just soil or stone. It was something older, something much darker. Owen couldn't believe it, but the evidence was all around him. The workers were suffering, their bodies slowly turning into something other than human. They couldn't stop it, couldn't escape it. The curse had taken hold. Reggie was the first to speak up, his voice rough and strained. "It's the road," he said one morning, barely able to move his cracked arms. "You're digging into something that shouldn't be dug up. This gravel, it's got something in it. Something evil." Owen wasn't sure what Reggie meant at first, but then the pieces began to fall together. The old road wasn't just a road. It was a path, a cursed one, paved with human sacrifice. The road had been built centuries ago, long before the modern world. It was constructed by an ancient people who believed the land itself was sacred, that the spirits of the earth needed to be appeased. So, they sacrificed their own, using their bodies to pave the path, sealing their souls into the gravel. Over time, the road had been forgotten, buried beneath the earth, its dark secret hidden. Now, the curse was awakening. Owen couldn't shake the feeling that the road wanted something from him. It wasn't just the gravel. It was the very land itself. The road wanted to expand. It wanted to grow, to spread out like a living thing, and the more the workers disturbed it, the more the curse spread. It wasn't just the workers either. A geologist named June, who had been studying the strange rock samples, seemed drawn to the road. She had noticed the same thing Owen had. Something was wrong with the soil, with the gravel, but she didn't know what it was. As she examined it more closely, she realized the gravel wasn't just dirt or rock, it was almost sentient. It had a purpose. It wanted to expand. Owen's mind raced. This couldn't be happening. He had to stop it. But how? How could he? Stop something that was so deeply tied to the earth, to the land itself? It was then that Reggie took Owen aside, his cracked face grim. "You don't understand, kid," he said, his voice rough. "This road isn't just a place. It's a trap. It's alive. And if you keep going, it'll swallow everything. Us. The town. Everything. You have to stop it before it's too late. But Owen didn't know how to stop it. The curse had already taken hold of the workers, and the road was growing faster now. The gravel seemed to spread out like a disease, infecting the surrounding land. If they didn't stop, it would consume the entire town. In the days that followed, the workers were forced to retreat, but the damage had already been done. The road was awake now, and it was hungry. It wanted more. Owen felt the pressure of the earth, the weight of the gravel, the curse closing in around him. The road, the gravel, it was all part of something larger, something he couldn't fight. It was too late. In a moment of desperation, Owen realized what he had to do. There was only one way to stop it. He had to make the ultimate sacrifice. With June and Reggie watching, Owen stepped forward. He knew what he had to do. He reached down into the gravel, the cursed earth, feeling its warmth, its pulse, its hunger. And as the gravel wrapped around him, he let it consume him. Owen's body hardened, his skin cracking like stone as the gravel merged with him. The pain was unbearable, but in that moment, he understood. He had become part of the road, part of the curse. The road's expansion stopped. The gravel stilled. It was no longer hungry, no longer alive in the way it had been. Owen had become the sacrifice, trapping the curse inside his own body. June and Reggie watched in silence, knowing what Owen had done. The road was no longer a living thing. It was still cursed, still dangerous, but it wouldn't spread anymore. And Owen? Owen was lost to the road, his body turning to stone, his spirit trapped forever in the gravel. His sacrifice would hold. The curse at bay, but at a terrible price. The road would always be there, and now it would never forget. The gravel skin would always remember. Story number 10. Marie Collins had been driving for hours, the road stretching out ahead of her like an endless ribbon. She was a traveling nurse moving from hospital to hospital, town to town, always chasing the next assignment. It wasn't the life she had planned for herself, but it was the life she had now. She kept her head down and focused on her work, hoping the constant change would help her forget the things that still haunted her. The night was dark and the road was quiet, with only the sound of her tires humming against the pavement. Her GPS had started acting up, but it wasn't anything new. It had a habit of sending her on weird detours, small roads that led nowhere, old streets that barely existed. She didn't mind. She was tired and needed to get off the highway for a bit. That's when the voice of the GPS came through, its usual cheerful tone a little more insistent than normal. Turn right on exit 99. Marie frowned. There was no exit. 99 on her map. She checked it again, but the road seemed to lead her right there. She had driven down this highway before, more than once, and had never seen the exit. But it was late, and she was tired. She'd taken stranger turns before. Why not? She muttered, pulling the wheel to the right. As soon as she drove off, the main road, the world around her seemed to shift. The familiar hum of the highway faded, and the air felt thicker, heavier, like she had crossed into something that wasn't quite real. The road stretched out before her, a typical rural highway, but something was wrong. There were no streetlights, no signs of life. The buildings around her looked old, too old, the kind of place you'd expect to see in a forgotten movie, stuck in time, never changing. She saw a diner with neon lights flickering, a gas station with its lights off, and rows of small, old, houses that seemed abandoned. But the streets were busy. People walked around, talking and laughing, as if it were a normal evening in a small town. Marie parked her car by the side of the road, unsure of what to make of the place. Something about it felt off, but she couldn't put her finger on it. She stepped out of her car and walked toward the diner. The door swung open with a creak, and she was hit by the smell of greasy food and stale coffee. Behind the counter was a woman with short, dark hair, wiping down the counter. She looked up and smiled when she saw Marie. "Evening, ma'am." "You new around here?" she asked, her voice warm, friendly. Marie hesitated, feeling an odd twinge in her chest. "I don't think so. I just got here." The woman nodded as if she had heard this before. "Yeah, most people don't stay long, but you'll get used to it." She smiled again, a little too wide. "You've been here before, haven't you?" Marie blinked. "I don't think so. I'm just passing through." The woman's smile faltered for a moment, but she quickly recovered. Sure, you'll see." She went back to wiping the counter, her hands moving mechanically as if she were doing it out of habit. Marie sat down at one of the booths, trying to shake the feeling that something wasn't right. She picked up the menu, but the words seemed blurry, out of place. The diner looked stuck in the 1950s. Old jukeboxes, checkered floors, vintage advertisements on the walls. It was like stepping into a different time. The bell over the door jingled, and a man walked in. A tall, broad-shouldered man wearing a sheriff's uniform. He looked like he had stepped out of an old Western movie, right down to his wide-brimmed hat. He tipped his hat to Marie as he passed by, his face friendly, but there was something cold behind his eyes. "Evening, ma'am," he said in a deep voice. "Name's Sheriff Griggs. You lost?" Marie shook her head. "I don't think so. I was just driving and, well, I guess I ended up here." Sheriff Griggs gave her a slow smile, his eyes narrowing slightly. "That's what they all say. You'll get used to it here. We all do." "Here?" Marie asked, her voice tightening. "Where exactly is here?" He didn't answer immediately, but his smile remained. "You'll see," he said. "Don't worry, everything happens for a reason." Marie didn't like the sound of that. She felt her stomach churn. She had the sense that she didn't belong here, that somehow she wasn't meant to be in this town. Before she could ask any more questions, the lights in the diner flickered and the door opened again. This time, a young girl walked in, holding a notebook in her hands. She looked out of place, like she didn't belong, but she didn't seem to care. She walked right up to Marie's booth and sat down across from her. "I'm Betty," she said, her voice quiet but steady. "You're new here, aren't you?" Marie nodded, still feeling disoriented. "Yeah, I don't know how I got here. This place isn't on any map." Betty smiled, but there was something sad in her eyes. "That's because it's not supposed to be here. This town, it resets every night. At midnight, everything goes back to the way it was before. Nothing changes. You think you're passing through, but you're not. You're stuck here." Marie felt a cold wave of dread wash over her. "What do you mean? This town, this place, isn't real?" Betty shook her head. "No, it's real, but it's not alive. We're all stuck here, repeating the same day over and over. You've been here before, even if you don't remember. Every time someone new shows up, they forget everything and start again, like they've been here forever." Marie's heart pounded. "What is this place?" Betty's smile was thin, almost sad. "It's where you go when you're in between. A limbo. You're not alive anymore. You're in a coma, Marie. Your real body, your real life, is somewhere else. This place is where you wait. Marie's head spun. She felt like she was falling, like the floor beneath her had disappeared. The diner, the people, the town. They all felt like a dream, something she couldn't wake up from. Before she could say anything else, the lights flickered again. The jukebox played a few notes, and then the clock on the wall started ticking, louder and louder. Marie's heart skipped a beat. The hands of the clock were moving, but they weren't moving forward. They were moving backward. Midnight, Sheriff Griggs' voice rumbled from the other side of the diner. Marie turned, her eyes wide with panic. What's happening? The town seemed to shudder, the air growing thick with tension. The clock struck 12, and everything in the diner, the people, the objects, the noise, faded into nothing. When she opened her eyes again, the diner was the same. The clock was ticking forward, and it was just like before. The same people, the same conversations, the same feeling of wrongness. Betty was there again, sitting across from her, looking as if nothing had changed. You'll understand, Betty said quietly. You have to choose, Marie. You can stay here, or you can wake up. Marie felt the weight of her choice settle on her chest. This was it. She could choose to stay in this endless loop of ghostly repetition, trapped in limbo forever. Or she could wake up, leaving everything behind. Marie stood up, her hands trembling. She didn't want to be stuck here anymore. She didn't want to live in this dead world. I choose to wake up, she said, her voice steady. The ground beneath her seemed to tremble, and the town began to collapse. The buildings crumbled, the people disappeared into the dust, and the air became thick with the sound of rushing wind. And then there was silence. Marie opened her eyes, and this time, when she saw the world, it was real. She was back. The town was gone. The clock had stopped. She had made it. She had woken up. But somewhere, in the fading echoes of the town, she could still hear Betty's voice. You'll always remember us, Marie. Always. Love stories that twist your mind and raise goosebumps? Like, comment, and subscribe for more. Cursed road tales like this one, because once you take the wrong exit, you may never leave.